All right, welcome in. Forgive me as I make sure that everything technically oh is set up how it should be. If you lost me for a second, that's fun. Now you probably hear me a lot better because StreamYard actually selected my microphone, and so I'll say welcome in. Presented by Ball is Life. This is all things NBA from A to Z. I'm Kris Pursiainen, and we are live. Hey, everybody, how you doing? So the New York Knicks have made two trades, really one, but came out as two. Jose Alvarado, now a New York Knick. Gershon Yabusele, now a Chicago Bull. Dalen Terry, now a New Orleans Pelican. So we'll get into how this happened, why this happened, what the Knicks are doing, why the Knicks are doing it. And we'll also talk about some unfortunate news that broke today, courtesy, I suppose, of The Athletic, Fred Katz and James Edwards, reporting that Deuce McBride is going to undergo surgery on a hernia and potentially not be back until the NBA playoffs. So we'll get into all that here today on all things NBA from A to Z, your current home to see me podcast and such. I am working on a multitude of moving factors, and that's why there's some change going on that you guys may have noticed and this and that. But we'll have an actual plan and scheme set up, I think, after the All-Star break. For right now, let's just do it like this, right? Check ball. Let's just ball up top, man. Let's hope. So the Knicks, they trade Gershon Yabusele for Dalen Terry. It's a straight swap. There are no draft picks in the deal. And the most important part of the trade was that it was not made official. So the most important part of the Knicks swap of Gershon Yabusele for Dalen Terry was that the trade was not actually called in to the league office. Why? Well, basically, the Knicks, to understand this, we have to go outside of what's been reported. Basically, the Knicks had been pursuing Jose Alvarado for months. They have identified him as a target. They had identified him as a target, as someone that the Pelicans may have viewed as a luxury and not a necessity. The Pelicans, not exactly cash strapped, but they often act like it. Maybe would appreciate the opportunity to duck a little bit of a tax bill, and New York able to help out in that way. They trade Yabusele to the Chicago Bulls in part because that's what allowed them to get Jose Alvarado. So sources familiar with the situation have told me that, yesterday, even as recently as yesterday, the New York Knicks were having trade conversations with the Pelicans about Jose Alvarado, in which New York walked away feeling like the ask was too high for where they were and for what they had. New Orleans looking for compensation for Alvarado, which they got, but also looking for compensation to take on Gershon Yabusele's player option for next season. And that's an interesting wrinkle because Alvarado has a player option for next season too. But those are very different because the assumption around the league right now is Jose Alvarado is going to opt out of that player option. Now, being with the Knicks, I think they have a different plan up their sleeve. We'll talk about that and what that means as well. But essentially, just the Knicks bring him in, and now, because Yabusele's player option was undesirable, the Pelicans necessarily weren't big fans of that. The Bulls were. The Bulls think, okay, this is a solid player. We've got a lot of guards, a lot of guards. There's a swap here that can benefit multiple parties involved. So the New York Knicks, having taken this information from their conversations with the New Orleans Pelicans, went out and sought to flip Gershon Yabusele for someone that the Pelicans would not want draft capital in return for taking on. So New York calls up Chicago. They say, hey, you've got 91 guards. Would you like to make it 90 guards and a 4-5 tweener? And Chicago was like, hell yeah, brother. So New York agreed to that deal with them, sending Dalen Terry to the Bulls. Nope, sending Dalen Terry from the Bulls. Error, scratch that. And sending Gershon Yabusele to the Bulls. Chicago interested in Yabusele. They won't be buying him out. I think they're fine if he opts into his player option next season. And I also think the Knicks are quite happy to be out from under that looming commitment they had made in the form of the player option to Yabusele. Remember, New York did not wake up and say, "Hey guys, let's give Gershon a player option just because we can." It was because they used the taxpayer mid-level exception to sign Yabusele that he was automatically granted that player option, the same way that Dalen Terry can be automatically granted a no trade clause if the Pelicans give him a qualifying offer. So New York, once they had Terry, was not really in a position to give Terry that qualifying offer. He was set to become essentially an unrestricted free agent at the end of the summer, which would have reset New York's cap for Yabusele, that is, given them that money back. So, New York, having solved the problem of New Orleans wanting draft compensation for both Yabusele and for giving up Alvarado, New York came back and they said, "Hey, what about Dalen Terry? If you want, you can make him a $7.7 million qualifying offer," which Jeremy Cohen of Knicks Film School said yesterday would make him a restricted free agent, give them the ability to match any offers. Or if he signed that qualifying offer, he would be granted a no trade clause. Um, that's undesirable for the Knicks, all of it, in the same way that having Yabusele was to an extent. Except that qualifying offer would have been more money than Yabu was owed for next season. So it was kind of clear that the Knicks were not planning on extending that qualifying offer ever, even if they did keep Terry. But getting Yabusele to Chicago for Terry allowed them to go back to New Orleans and say, "Hey, you guys wanted draft compensation for taking on Yabusele's deal. You also wanted draft compensation to give us Alvarado. We have draft compensation for one of those things. Now we only need one of those things." And so, with the Knicks being able to send Terry to the Pelicans, New Orleans is able to also be out from under Gershon Yabusele's player option for next season. And they send Alvarado to New York because, in part, I think, and Jeremy Cohen again pointed this out, the Knicks did the same thing with Josh Hart. They acquire a player, they have him opt in to his player option, and then they extend him later on in the offseason at the start of the new league year, as opposed to having him decline the player option and extend immediately. Now, you might think, why would a player do this? If they're going to get the same amount of money no matter what, I think they'll be all right doing whatever. It's like, hey, you're going to get paid the exact same dollar amount, except this way your team is better. Yeah, maybe they're not allowed to tell the media that that was the plan, but that's the plan, right? Josh Hart did just that. And what did the Knicks do? They landed Dante DiVincenzo with the cap space that Hart created. And asked about it at media day before the next season, Hart was like, I don't know. I don't know what they did or how they did it. But yeah, a little bit, maybe. Maybe I tampered a little bit. So I do think it's interesting for New York to be in a situation with Alvarado where he can do the same. So we've talked about recapping the deal of Gershon Yabusele to the Chicago Bulls, Dalen Terry to the New York Knicks, and why the New York Knicks did that deal. They did that deal to get out of Yabusele's player option for next season, because when they don't extend, or if they didn't extend Terry a qualifying offer, he effectively became an unrestricted free agent. That's why they did that deal. Now, the next deal, taking Terry to New Orleans. Here's where the sweeteners come in. The Knicks did not just swap Terry for Alvarado. They did not magically turn Gershon Yabusele into the point guard deadline acquisition of their dreams. What they did do, though, was add in 2 second-round picks, which they could very much afford to do, and a little bit of cash. So the New York Knicks had 2 second-round picks available to trade. They also had the Washington Wizards protected first-round pick, which I reported back in December, actually alongside my initial report that the Knicks and Pelicans had trade talks concerning Alvarado himself, that Washington pick has an increased value around the NBA right now. And the reason, particularly before Washington got 2 All-Stars out of nowhere, was that it projected to be 2 better second-round picks in an era where the first and second aprons carry such draconian punishments
that staying under them really is just as important as having great talent in the building. So your flexibility is really important. The New York Knicks did not have much left after all the blockbusters that they've swung in recent off seasons, but they did have 2 second-round picks, and they had some cash. We know James Dolan's got cash, and we know that he's unafraid to spend it to make the Knicks better. So they call back New Orleans. They say, hey, listen, we got your 2 second-round picks, and we got your expiring salary. What else? The Pelicans. We brought this up earlier. They're not strapped for cash, but they love to act like it. Here's where that comes in. They accept cash from the New York Knicks. That gets the deal done and lands Jose Alvarado in the Big Apple. The 6-foot Puerto Rican Brooklynite is back where he belongs in New York City. So we've recapped that deal and why the Knicks did it. We've recapped New York's Wednesday talks with the Pelicans and when they found out that the Pelicans still wanted plenty of draft capital for Alvarado, and also to compensate for Yabusele's player option, which is, again, why New York went out and made the first of these deals. The plan with Dalen Terry, it seemed like it was always to redirect him. He made sense on this Knicks team as someone who, under a head coach that just put in Kevin McCullough Jr. last night, took Jalen Brunson out and put in Kevin McCullough Jr. in crunch time against Jokic and Murray. This is a coach that is very intentional about shifts and about getting out there on defense and putting personnel out there on defense to succeed. So you have to think Terry at 6'7", 6'8", with a nice wingspan, with some nice length, would have played into that. But it's also clear why the Knicks turn him immediately into Jose Alvarado. And this is where I want to get into Jose specifically and what he brings to this Knicks team. Ball handling is thing number one. It's very easy to say, the Knicks have Clarkson and Kolek and all these guys, but neither of those two guards have been a clear fit in this rotation. And if you ask yourself why, you can chalk it up to Clarkson's game being too directed and too in a box. Mike Brown bringing him over into the rotation to handle the ball and drive to the rim and feed open teammates. And you're getting the scoring out of Clarkson, but not necessarily any playmaking. Karl Anthony Towns is longing and lamenting for days of Cameron Payne. I think it didn't go exactly how they were planning there. It was a great signing. It was a great value. Nothing will change that. The same way that nothing will change that the fit wasn't there on a team with Jalen Brunson and Deuce McBride and a bunch of guards that are better than Clarkson, that also make it difficult to play Clarkson and not notice his lack of defense or superstar level offense. He just wasn't really an amazing fit for this system. Neither was Yabusele, who signed with the Knicks almost a full week before Mike Brown was hired. So a lot of people getting on the 30-year-old Frenchman for his lack of fit in the Knicks system. He had no idea what the hell he was signing up for. So I'd cut him a little slack. And when it comes to Alvarado, he fits like a glove in this system, primarily because of his physicality, his grit, his defense. That's going to be the biggest thing that allows him to get on the court to get minutes. He's going to be a big part of what the Knicks do for the rest of this year, particularly because Mike Brown has credited Deuce McBride and Landry Shamet as the team's two best on-ball defenders so far this season. So for Brown to credit McBride and Shamet as the two best on-ball defenders, with Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby sitting right there in that locker room, that's a loud statement to me. And to acquire someone like Alvarado, who in my opinion joins the first group of gritty, aggressive guys who will put their bodies on the line to win a ball game, well, that is going to make a difference for the New York Knicks. Landry Shamet, Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, now injured, and Mitchell Robinson. I've dubbed them the grit gang of this Knicks team. They are the four guys who consistently put their bodies on the line, play like they don't care about stats, play like they don't care about box scores, play like they don't care who's in front of them outside of knowing their personnel and executing the game plan. There's no ego. There's no anything with those guys. It's just win. And Jose Alvarado is going to join that group. Now, in this particular circumstance, it's extra important for New York to have acquired Alvarado here, given what we learned about Miles McBride, which is he's dealing with a hernia, will undergo surgery, according to Fred Katz and James Edwards of The Athletic. And According to Steph Bondi of the New York Post, this was discovered amid testing on his left ankle. I know last week, I reached out to the Knicks organization for an update on McBride's injury, and there was no response or to the request for comment. It was clearly something that they were just dealing with internally and trying to feel out and see what the heck was going on. They're testing the ankle. All of a sudden, it's a hernia. So either they knew the whole time, and that's why things were a little awkward, or they didn't know, and this is genuinely a crazy turn of events. Either way, it makes sense why they weren't just running out and saying it, particularly ahead of the trade deadline, where the Knicks are trying to acquire a small, feisty, physical defensive guard. In my opinion, there is no coincidence that the the injury suffered by Deuce McBride was revealed and reported immediately after the trade for Alvarado was done. I think that was New York trying to save their leverage, make sure the price elasticity did not change very much on Alvarado, and also just ensure that they weren't giving up too much info. Like this is it now, man. We're in an information war. We're in an era simultaneously with the most information ever, and also the most nothing ever. Like you look all over at the information that's out there, and a lot of it is nothing. It's Giannis may or may not be traded ahead of the deadline, which may or may not be on Thursday, at which point the Milwaukee Bucks, who may or may not employ him, may or may not decide to make a trade that may or may not involve Antetokounmpo, who may or may not have won Finals MVP in 2021. The Phoenix Suns may or may not be interested. The Minnesota Timberwolves may or may not be interested. Giannis may or may not be interested in going to play with Anthony Edwards. There's one team that may or may not have stopped pursuing. Like, I hate all of this so much, immensely. And I just think the Knicks at this trade deadline, we're looking at all of this and going, guys, we're going to get Giannis if we're going to get Giannis. Giannis is going to go where Giannis wants to go. We got to figure out what we can do as the New York Knicks to be the best team possible if he does not come. And with the injury to Deuce McBride, getting Jose Alvarado is great timing. He's going to immediately replace that guard presence off of the bench, the bulldog that McBride is at the point of attack defensively. Mike Brown credits McBride always for his perfect technique when guarding ball screens, when guarding ball handlers. I think Alvarado is someone that Brown is going to love coaching, that he'll have no problem falling in love with very early on in their time together, and that he'll have no problem teaching fundamentals to and getting to play his way. So I expect a full buy-in from Alvarado into Brown's system. This is an acquisition that I think Jose and his camp have known for a little bit was loading. This is pressure for him. He's got to come in and be this guy that is almost his reputation precedes him. Hey, this guy's going to come in and get these crazy steals, and he's going to be a fan favorite, and he's going to ignite the Garden. I said all of those same things about Gershon Yabusele, and he didn't fit at all. I thought he was very obviously going to be a fan favorite player, a 4-5 tweener that can smack above the break threes, that can hit you with a little 1-2 shake in the post. I did not expect Yabusele to kind of get Obi Toppined in Mike Brown's system, get sent to the corners and just kind of be made to fit in, not fit out. I don't think it was a poor utilization of Yabusele given the rest of the team. I think it was a poor utilization of him in a vacuum, though, and that's why the Knicks never really got too much out of him in the way of anything but scoring. When it comes to Giannis, we brought him up. We'll have to go here, so let's just do it quickly now. It was becoming clear in recent weeks, no matter what. I know everyone was getting on ESPN and Get Up and Sports Center and Get Up 2 and about whatever other shows and being like, hey guys, this might happen. Stay tuned. Tune in all day long because this might happen. Don't turn that television off. Don't you flip that channel because this trade might happen. I know we got 85 straight hours of that programming, but now that the trade didn't happen, everyone is coming out and saying, hey, we knew this wasn't going to happen. No, you didn't. No, the heck you did not, because you were telling me 16 hours ago not to go to bed. You told me 14 hours ago that by midnight we'll know the framework. Man, the Bucks were willing to move this guy if an offer completely blew their socks off and they knew they had to take it now. But as I have been saying recently, they also know the ways in which these offers change in the offseason. They like the ways in which these offers change in the offseason. Here's a local example. The New York Knicks in the offseason can no longer offer Mitchell Robinson in return for Giannis Antetokounmpo. His contract expires. They can offer, because it's the offseason, 2 more first-round picks. Whoa! Like, yeah, no crap the Bucks are going to prefer the second one of those offers. So I know Shams tried putting some pressure on them, saying the other day on ESPN that if they don't trade him now, they won't be able to tank, and they're gonna be winning games and too many games. They don't care. They're just gonna shut him down. What is he gonna do? Ask for a trade? The manufactured hysteria and drama is too much for me. Don't want it. Giannis, the Knicks, they were always interested. They never stopped being interested. I think over the last offseason, that exclusive negotiating window, the fact that it was reported like that, just screams Milwaukee, because New York would not want to tell everyone that they had a chance to land this guy and didn't. So it was, either Giannis or the Bucks that got out from. But it's also interesting that, like, the reports of that exclusive negotiating window were so odd. The talk was that the window happened after Bridges was extended. I just still don't buy that. I'm going to say it like that. I'm going to say it like that. I still just don't buy that the only talks that the Knicks and Bucks had were after Bridges was ineligible to be traded. I am of the belief that they were in contact before then. And I'm of the belief that the Milwaukee Bucks were the team in those negotiations that at one point stopped and said, we are going to step away. Let's revisit this, but we're going to step away. I just do not believe that the New York Knicks, actually, I can report that the New York Knicks did not at any point during those talks say, actually, never mind, guys. That price is a little too high for us. It's just Giannis you're trading. Like, think about what do you think happened there? What do you think happened there? The Knicks just said, oh man, Giannis would be great, but I think we're good. Or the Milwaukee Bucks said, guys, we got to revisit. We got to see if we can get better offers. We're in a tough spot right now. Giannis only wants to go to one team. We don't exactly have all the leverage in the world. We don't need to trade him. We're not going to trade him. I know which one I buy happened. Which one do you buy happened? Hint, it's the second one. So for Giannis, the Knicks, their pursuit never ended. It was just put on pause, clearly resumed, and put on pause by the Bucks, I will clarify. Clearly resumed here ahead of the trade deadline, but I also think it's worth noting that for all the inside reporting that was being done on a daily, hourly, minutely basis about the Giannis pursuit, New York's name fell out of those reports, and it was never explained why. Nobody that stopped reporting that New York was interested in Giannis explained why they reported that or what had happened or if anything had happened. All of a sudden, it just went from New York, Golden State, Minnesota, Miami to Minnesota, Miami, because Golden State is out. And it's like, well, what about New York? It's like Golden State traded Kuminga. They are out. It's like, hey, what about the Knicks? Well, the Warriors are done. Oh, okay. Like, the Knicks' pursuit of Giannis never ended. I just think the Knicks realized earlier than everyone else to stop caring because it's not going to happen again. And like, I do think Giannis Antetokounmpo is moved to the deadline. If I did have to give my guess, a gun to my head of where he would go, I would say the New York Knicks. But the notion that the Knicks failed to acquire him last offseason or any team failed to acquire him at this deadline is silly because the Bucks weren't moving him unless something really blew their socks off. To me, it's not failure to not offer them Jalen Brunson. You know what I mean? Like, it's not failure to not offer what it would take to really knock their socks off. I don't think the Timberwolves or the Heat or the Warriors should see it as failure. These 4 teams all did what they could. and this is what they got. Get what you get. You can get upset. I won't tell you what to do, but you get what you get. When it comes to other notes on the Knicks, we talked about New York finding out from New Orleans that their price was a little too high for Alvarado Yabusele swap. So they go and swap Yabusele for someone without a player option, allowing them to pay the price they were looking to pay for Alvarado, 2 second-round picks and some cash for someone who can opt in at the end of the season and they can re-sign a couple months later. That will help the Knicks stay under the second apron for the 2026 to 2027 season. This is now the season to look at, because last year I told you guys the Knicks were not yet in their championship window. And everyone was like, what do you mean? They just traded 6 first-round picks over the offseason. They're totally in their championship window. But the fact of the matter was the Knicks front office, if you put them on truth serum, would not have been able to tell you that that season was part of the championship window that they presented to management, to ownership, to the people above them. That they would not be able to say that because it was not. The Knicks did jump the window a little by making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, being one of the final 4 teams out there in the NBA. That means the window's open. You know, you can say the window's not open, but if you lean a little too close into it, you're going to fall through, kids. The window's wide open. You're one of the 4 teams left. So New York shuffles. They think, oh my God, it's go time. They make a little bit of a wild move, which is to fire their coach, bring in a new coach, and then go through the ups and downs, the bumps and speed bumps of all that. It's all, in their mind, worth it for this end of season product. Whatever that is going to look like, that is going to be what this is all for. Giannis Antetokounmpo, potentially coming here in the offseason as opposed to at the trade deadline, really does not change those plans. There is no team right now that is like, oh, we had a plan for the next couple of years, and now we didn't get Giannis, and now that plan is ruined, and we have no. The Miami Heat still have a plan. The Minnesota Timberwolves still have a plan. The Knicks still have a plan. So the Knicks now, attention turns to the 2026-2027 season, where it seems like they are going to look to remain under the second apron, and then I suppose go over it for 2028, 2029? No, 2027, 2028. I'm so bad at counting, y'all. Damn. I just went from 6 to 8. Maybe it's because the stupid meme has my... You kids. You youth kids, always with your TikTok. And anyway, I'm 23 years old. So basically, the New York Knicks at this deadline, to summarize, no Giannis. Maybe in the offseason, revisit. Yabu, player option, bad. New Orleans thought it was bad. New York found Chicago to take it, gave it to them. Took Terry. Terry, no option next year, not bad. New Orleans, no longer bad. So New Orleans takes Terry. They take the sweetener that they always wanted alongside Alvarado, alongside Yabusele in a deal for Alvarado, but they get it with Terry instead of Yabusele so that they don't have to be on the hook for that player option next season. Alvarado has a player option for next season that he's probably going to opt into. Do not fret. That is a good sign for the Knicks. Not because it would be a better sign if he walked, but because, even though, yes, after opting into a player option, then he's a complete free agent after that. This is what they did with Josh Hart. This is how they landed Dante DiVincenzo, was having Hart opt in, using the cap space that created to make the addition, and then extending Hart afterwards. So I would think Alvarado gets an extension, becomes a key part of what New York does here on the basketball court, applying pressure for 90-plus feet, getting big steals, making big stops. This is how the Knicks won the game yesterday against Denver. When it came down to it, Jalen Brunson, tough buckets, his shooters hitting shots, and big defensive stops from the Knicks, from namely Mitchell Robinson. That is how they beat the Denver Nuggets. That is how they're going to beat teams, is by buying into the fundamentals. You saw Karl Anthony Towns yesterday talking about Mitch's and his backup. They're just two sides of the same coin, and they can play together. They can play apart. That's the mentality the Knicks need to have. They need to have the mentality of it is not bad if someone is not on the court to close. Someone else just earned that opportunity that game. They've got to adopt this team-first mindset, this we over me mindset that Mike Brown is bringing in, because it is how to win. It is the way that they're going to win. if they're going to win. And I think Alvarado presents as a really, really nice addition to this core. He gives them ball handling. He gives them ball pressure. He gives them defensive intensity and grit. He gives them a fan favorite. And also just this is a Knicks team, like I said earlier, that has benefited a lot from guys like McBride, Shamet, Hart, and Robinson, leading by example with regard to grit, tenacity, toughness. For Alvarado to come in, particularly at the time that McBride is heading out of the rotation, is great timing for the Knicks. And when it comes to McBride himself, again, no coincidence that news broke immediately after the trade for Alvarado, because that was the Knicks' leverage getting killed. If that came out before, comes out right after, and that makes a lot of sense. So, one last thing to talk about, and that's the buyout market. James Edwards, The Athletic, was all over this. He made some really great points that led me to do some digging. So the Knicks, with where they were, given their proximity to the second apron, could not access the buyout market until later in the season. Why? Because when you sign someone for the remainder of the season, you pay them more in February than you do in April, right? You're paying them for the amount of season left. And the Knicks did not have the room left, if they did not move Gershon Yabusele, to add anyone in the buyout market. Now, by moving Yabusele for Terry, they opened up, I believe, a little smidgen of room. But by moving then Terry for Alvarado, effectively moving Yabusele for Alvarado, they opened up about over $1 million in room with the second apron. So all of a sudden now, New York is able to access the buyout market much, much sooner. I don't know the exact math. I don't know if they are able to sign someone the second that, they become available, or if there's any pro rate waiting they have to do. I think they have enough room just to make an addition now. But don't quote me on that, because I'm not actually sure. Someone in the chat will prove me wrong before I even figure it out myself. Let's get to some of your comments. I want to take any questions before we get out of here. Nice little lunchtime stream. Any questions you can go ahead and throw them in the chat. Los Knicks, what's going on? We got a comment from Los Knicks on Twitter. Cat is doing something different, doing that hard work. It's what Brunson needs, what the team needs. Yeah, Karl-Anthony Towns was excellent yesterday against the Denver Nuggets. He's been excellent in plenty of recent games. 2 straight games of 20-plus rebounds earlier the other week. Buying in, doing the dirty work, and he's on the same page as Mike Brown, but it's more than that. It feels like Towns is himself again, which is just a huge deal for the New York Knicks. Chris reposted the stream. Shout out to Chris. Carl Knight, Leon Rose. Yeah, I agree. Jelly Slimes, Leon Rose statue will be up. If this Knicks team wins the championship, I think Jalen Brunson probably the guy who gets a statue. But just given New York sports, their love for the architect, I could see it. Will the Knicks move Clarkson and Pacome, who combined to make $5.1 million, for another impactful player, says Carl Knight? I want to guess no. I think, if there's a team that calls about Clarkson, I don't think the Knicks would be, too heartbroken to deal him, given that he's not really a fit for them. But also, I think there's some value in having a break glass in case of emergency guy for the playoffs. I do. I'm sorry. I do. I know Knicks fans don't want to hear about any plans of Jordan Clarkson playoff minutes right now, but I just would disagree. I think he's still a good NBA player, a playable NBA player who you know what you're getting out of. And I would raise you that just 2 years ago at Madison Square Garden, Alec Burks was like the 4th best player in their series against the Pacers, maybe 3rd. Jordan Clarkson could be that guy. He could be that guy. So if I'm the Knicks, I think this Terry swap got them out of losing Dadier for nothing. He's clearly not some major part of their plans, but he's also clearly talented. He keeps having these 20, 30-point games in Westchester. If he can assert himself on the court the way that someone like Mo Diawara does, I think he could be good kind of, earlier on than people kind of think for most projects, especially French players have a particularly bad rep in the NBA because of some high profile draft busts that have irreparably seemingly damaged the reputation of the French in the NBA. I think it's so odd. I wish people could just be normal, but whatever. I'm going to get to the rest of your guys' comments. To answer this one in short, no, I don't think they will, but I could see them moving Clarkson. The San Antonio Spurs decide they want Clarkson back for Sohan. I could see that being a move the Knicks make. Other than that, I'm not sure what is out there that would intrigue the Knicks. I don't know if the Wolves would be interested in Jordan Clarkson, but they just got Ayo Dosunmu. So I would think if they were, they're not anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So I wouldn't expect anything. I would expect New York to be done, but I'm not at all sure that they are. I know there was some interest still in Nick Richards, but obviously he went somewhere else. Where did he go? I don't even know. Who traded for Nick Richards? I feel like the Raptors should have instead of Trace Jackson Davis. Oh, the Bucks. All right. That's fun and exciting for people. All right. Well, hey, let's get back to your comments. Leon Rose fleeced. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? You mean he what you said? Or Leon Rose fleeced? Because those are different. I think all things considered, he did the fleecing. But I also think it's kind of exactly what we thought would happen. No? I've been reporting since December they like Alvarado. Been reporting, probably going to be not too many, no first round picks for that guy, second round picks, little Dottier action, little whatever. Ends up being Dalen Terry, who they pulled out of their butt. All right. Jay from East New York, what's going on? Hey, Kris, if I may, can you give a rundown of players available to the New York Knicks via the buyout market? The team now 1.1 million under the second apron. Think that's our last move to watch. Yeah, this is a great point. I think it's fair to say Chris Paul is expected to be bought out. Maybe that's a veteran the Knicks look at. I would doubt it. I would personally bet against it, even with all the connections with Rose and everything. But Chris Paul would be available. Lonzo Ball is expected to be available. I would be interested in him if I were the Knicks, having him and Jose Alvarado. Even if Lonzo is just to momentarily replace Deuce McBride, I do think there's something there. I'm not totally against Lonzo Ball. I know Jeremy Cohen has a buyout candidate that he likes. So if you say this guy's name, you've got to credit Jeremy Cohen, but George Niang. Again, credit to Jeremy Cohen, who has pointed out that George Niang, could be someone the Knicks could look into. And I'm trying to think who else would be available. I mean, I can go ahead and check Twitter right now and just kind of see what names stand out. We can do that together. Chris Middleton, I don't know. I can't see him being bought out of that much money. But even if he was, actually, is his new deal enough to? I don't know. His new deal might not be enough to. His new deal might still be too much to buy out for the Knicks. I'm not expecting Gabe Vincent to be bought out. No, DeMar DeRozan does not want to be bought out. I'm interested to see who does get bought out. I know teams right now are making roster moves to kind of avoid that. And there, some guys are getting traded because they just similarly that's the end of the road there. But I can't think of anyone besides Ball or Niang or Paul that really fits this current roster, I guess is the way to put it. So and I don't know that Paul fits this current roster even. He doesn't actually, especially now with Alvarado. So yeah, one buyout candidate I'll say to keep an eye on. And I doubt he's bought out, but I just worth keeping an eye on Colin Sexton. Maybe something happens up there in Chicago. I'd heard yesterday that it's worth keeping an eye on a potential buyout. Again, I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't think Sexton wants that reputation this early on in his career of being a guy that signed a minimum deal because the team might expect him to then sign one again in the offseason, and he probably wants 10 times as much. I just maybe. So someone worth keeping an eye on there. Tall Sean reposted the stream. Shout out to you. Appreciate that. Nick Yak says that was money for Mitch. If you're talking about last night against Denver, against Jokic, absolutely. And that was money in a big way. Because, well, he's a free agent. He's going to need money. And we actually did get a report today from Ian Begley saying that the New York Knicks value Mitchell Robinson higher than any other team in the NBA, in part because of the unique value that he brings to them, given that they have Karl-Anthony Towns, that Mitchell Robinson is a good blend with Towns in the front court, but also provides kind of the change up to Towns' fastball, if you will. Not Robinson, the more traditional big man, and Towns, the more modern star. But the two are both really important to Knicks basketball. They were both really important to beating Jokic and the Nuggets yesterday, and they've both been really important to the Knicks in the playoffs. So for New York, keeping these two bigs should be a priority. Just straight up, because having these two guys is a great mix of looks and scheme and personnel, especially around Jalen Brunson. And Mike Brown is the perfect coach to kind of mix and match and handle all those things. So yeah, all in all, clutchpoints.com. I covered the Knicks for them, and I covered the Liberty for them, and the NBA and the NFL and the WNBA and whatever. But I think my title is New York basketball reporter because I do Knicks and Liberty and everything. But go follow my coverage at Clutch Points. Also, go check out dailyknicks.com. dailyknicks.com. Super easy. Literally 50 articles a month from me on there. I write 50 articles about the Knicks every single month, and I put them on there. So if you just want to, keep up with the team, you don't have time to watch every game, you could just go check out Daily Knicks, man. If you do watch every game, we have lots of articles on there about cap minutia and little details and wrinkles. And also it's I think a good way to keep up with kind of like sports media and the Knicks in general, because we'll cover, Draymond Green said this, Paul Pierce said this, which I know some people moan and groan at, but ultimately it's national coverage of the team. Like, these are the narratives that are getting kind of peddled out there. And trust me, you see some of my writers, they are not afraid to flame these athletes or these analysts or whoever if they don't like their take. So definitely just a fun website over there at dailyknicks.com. And of course, the reporting I do on the NBA, on the Knicks, you can go read over at clutchpoints.com. There's over 1,000 of you in here right now. That's awesome. So go ahead, drop me a follow. If you don't follow me, I think I'm a must follow when it comes to following the New York Knicks. I cover every home game. I cover practices, and hopefully one day someone pays me to cover road games too. I'd love to make this my full-time work. So until then, hopefully be back soon on a stream much like this. You can read my articles. You can see my thoughts. I promise I'm spending the rest of today writing, y'all. So I'm going to have articles coming out all day about these deals, this deal, if you want to consider it one bigger one, but also the lack of a deal for Giannis, what that means for their summer pursuit of Antetokounmpo. We can talk about all of that over at dailyknicks.com and over at Clutch Points. It's easy to just look up my name. It's hard to type it in, but once you do, no one else has got this name. So it's easy to find my stuff online. You can go follow me wherever. I do TikTok, I do Instagram, I do what all the cool kids do. I'm doing all the ticks and talks. So yeah, okay. I need a life and job so bad. All right. Hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Stay tuned. I'll have you covered. dailyknicks.com, clutchpoints.com, and right here on Twitter, or you can go over to my TikTok, my Instagram. It's all the same. Kris Pursiainen. I'll catch y'all. Have a great day. Have a great rest of your week. And happy NBA trade deadline. We got an hour left to go. If the Knicks do something else, I'll come back on live. But I would guess they're done. So I'm going to go have some lunch. It's avocado, bacon, grilled cheese type of day for your boy. And I got 2 thumbs. All right. I'll catch y'all. Have